A disinformation attack was witnessed in the city of Bucha in the Kiev region following the withdrawal of the Russian troops. Our troops withdrew from the area in accordance with the plans and previously reached agreements. Several days later, there was a staging that's now being spread across the media and social platforms by Ukraine and its Western patrons. Russian forces fully retreated from the city on the 30th of March. On the 31st of March, the city's mayor made a statement saying everything was in order. And 2 days later, we saw that staged footage from the streets of Bucha, which they now are attempting to use for anti-Russian purposes. A couple of weeks ago, there were attempts to misrepresent the situation at one of Mariupol's maternity hospitals as a crime committed by the Russian troops. It later became clear those attempts had been made to cause a provocation. The materials presented were later exposed as fakes.
Well, let's now bring in RT's Maria Finoshna for more. Maria, good to see you. Indeed, take us through the situation in Bucha. What happened? So many claims and counterclaims as it stands. What do we know?
Well, the story is about the Ukrainian town of Bucha, northwest of Kiev, that has been under severe fighting for weeks. It fell under the control of the Russian army on the third day of Moscow's special military operation on the ground. And last week, it was recaptured by Ukraine's forces. And sometime after that, videos started emerging from that town, allegedly showing piles of dead bodies lying on the streets. Very disturbing images indeed. And there was also information about mass graves. Kiev reported that around 300 civilians were found dead there and was quick to accuse Moscow of war crime and massacre. Russia's defense ministry earlier reported that their forces had left the town of Bucha on March 30th, the day after another round of peace talks on Ukraine. And while Bucha was under their control, not a single civilian was hurt. Moscow calls Kiev's claims a provocation and the whole footage a fake. Now, some media speculate that there is some contradiction in Russia's defense ministry's reports regarding dates, and they say that apparently their troops were still in town after March 31st. But on that very day, the city mayor posted a video on social media showing him standing in front of local administration building, happily announcing that the town is now cleared from, his words, Russian occupants. And in that video, he never happened to mention any dead body lying on the streets. Also, Russia's defense ministry now says that it still controls some of the territory around the Irpin River and is still in the region, and that is also used by some media as proof of their lies. But being in the town and in the region is not exactly the same thing. Also, Ukraine's national police posted another video on April the 2nd showing their troops clearing the town of Bucha after the Russian forces. It's an 8-minute long video, and we'll now show you part of it, but you can easily find the whole footage on the web. And as you will now see, the picture is completely different. Well, it's just clear that this story should be independently and immediately investigated, and Russia called on the UN Security Council emergency meeting on the issue, but Russia's request was denied. Here's Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
We've demanded that an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council be held on the matter, since such provocations pose a direct threat to the international peace and security. The President of the Security Council this month, the UK, hasn't so far confirmed there is such a possibility, but we will continue to demand that the presidency fulfill its role.
Well, it's really sad to see how this story develops, I have to say. We as journalists are used to be very cautious with information, especially during wars. I just returned from Lugansk, where I spent weeks covering the conflict, and I have to say that it has become a rule, an iron rule for all journalists working there, not to report about anything before official verification. Even if you see an explosion with your own eyes or you hear the artillery fire, it's really hard to say what is really happening happening while false reports may actually hurt. Russia's deputy permanent representative to the UN now says that Russia will insist on the emergency special meeting on Bucha on Monday, and also added that London does not want it to be discussed separately because it may disturb the Western reputation. Back to you.
Maria, thanks very much. RT's Maria Finoshna live. Well, let's bring you some reaction. The French President Emmanuel Macron has said Russian forces are responsible for the killings in Bucha and that Moscow will have to answer for its crimes. British and US officials have called for an investigation by the International Criminal Court as well. And the Polish president states the images emerging from the city are a sign Ukraine needs more weapons. But the Russian ambassador to the US claims it was Ukrainian battalions who shelled the town after the Russian military left, and that Washington is ignoring that possibility. Journalist Alexander Kotz, who was embedded with the Russian military, shared his thoughts with us on the situation.
I spent almost a month near the city of Bucha and saw what sort of relations there were between the local people and the Russian military. It was not aggressive, it was normal. They even did business. There was an exchange of military dry rations for dairy products. There was no aggression or conflict between the Russian military and local residents. The people whose bodies that are now shown on Ukrainian television were killed not long ago, and I know for sure that the troops left the city on March the 30th. On March 31st, this was confirmed by the mayor of the city of Bucha, who didn't mention any bodies lying in the streets. There is a white bandage on the sleeves of many dead people. This is the identification mark of the Russian troops, and local residents, just in case, tied white bandages to show, "I'm one of you, don't shoot at me." Of course, for the Ukrainian military or nationalists, such a bandage is a symbol of the enemy.
Well, former US Marine Intelligence Officer Scott Ritter told us he isn't convinced that the Ukrainian government is interested in a thorough investigation of the Bucha killings.
We've seen the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court talk about his intent to investigate. Why isn't he knocking on the door, demanding access to these bodies, demanding the absolute necessity to do these forensic examinations of the dead, to find the data that would point a finger at who the perpetrator was? Well, I don't believe the Ukrainian government's going to permit a thorough investigation of an incident that would put the Ukrainian government in bad light. Look, they've already achieved a propaganda victory. The entire West is outraged at the Bucha incident. The entire West appears to be blaming Russia. So the Ukrainian government doesn't need to do any additional work.